Governor of Texas earlier.
Here we go.
Deputy Governor of Texas earlier, and
evil. And I say, how long are we going to let...
Sometimes you just listen to their fucking voice and you know that there's some sort of like a pastor or a preacher or something like that, dude. It's like this guy, like, you know he's talking about Jesus somehow. Okay, video games. Wait, how many of these are there?
Say that he probably logs 6 to 8 hours a day playing one of those, you know, Fortnite or one of those video games where you're doing nothing but dehumanizing people by blowing their heads out. Blowing their heads off, one after another after another.
Because it does seem to desensitize some of these killers to the horrific nature of actually what happens when you pull a trigger and the gun is aimed at another human being.
Okay. So here's the way that I look at this, okay? Is Fortnite's not a real game. It's not the same thing, okay? Like I don't even, like, how do you even like, I mean, really, it's crazy, man. Like, the best part about it is, like, these people, like this lady's probably like 45 or something like that. It's like, you know what Fortnite is. Like, stop trying to act like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, oh, you're above it or whatever. And this guy right here, who probably has his kids help him with this fucking email, is gonna tell other people what video games do. I mean, this is insane. Kids don't steal cars. Yeah, they don't. It's like nobody steals cars. Like, people that play Pac-Man don't do drugs more often. I mean, this is just crazy.
Of actually what happens when you pull a trigger and the gun is aimed at another human being.
It's like, I don't know how, like, it's like maybe that happens for like one person, right? It's like, yeah, maybe if yeah, you spend all day playing violent video games that are super realistic, maybe you're slightly desensitized. But the one thing that I know is that everybody who acts like a fucking hard-ass, badass Navy SEAL online is the most timid little bitch in real life. So I don't think that's true at all. I mean, really, the people have a pretty good understanding that they're just playing a video game.
I agree. It's just, if you think about it, you know, he's 21 years old. For the last 25 years, we have been, the parenting method in this country has been very soft, and there haven't been a lot of really tough parenting methods that have been popular. And it's, you see that it causes young people to not have the capacity to really work through tough things that happen in your life. Not that that is what causes people to become active shooters, but...
Then why are you talking about it? Because, like, you're probably... Here's what it is, right? Is that this just happened, and they have to go live immediately. So she doesn't have a teleprompter to read off of that's got, you know, something that's been edited and, you know, fucking made sure that there's nothing wrong with it by, like, 5 different people. So she's saying what she really thinks, which is always a bad thing whenever most news anchors do something like this, because usually they don't, and they have a very clear agenda. And so this is, yeah, these people should stick to reading off of a teleprompter. Why don't they ever blame violent movies for this? Because they watch movies. That's why. It's simple. They like the violent movies. They don't like the violent video games. I mean, what do you mean? Come on.
That comprised with actively engaging in something that causes you to dehumanize people for hours and hours on end every day.
I like how both of them just immediately came to this conclusion, right? They didn't just, they're not, there's like no real like rationality behind this. There's one person introduces the idea, the other person confirms the idea, and the first person then just assumes the confirmation is the truth, and so they just talk about it like it's a fact after that. I mean, it's crazy the way that people do this shit.
It really is a... I think it's just a bad combination, and it's something to be looked at. And it's something that we've seen several times in these active shooters.
Yeah, it's a bad combination. It's something to be looked at. She's been taking a lot of lines from Donald Trump. about how to talk about something and not actually confirm anything. Eventually, we will get something done. Eventually, something might happen. We'll have to look at it, right? This is the language that I use whenever you guys want to pin me down to confirming an event, right? It's completely unclear, and that's always the way that goes. Okay, we'll watch the next one, okay? Well, let's get out of that. Same every single time something happens 20 years ago. Well, the thing is, like, it's always very easy to blame things that you don't really understand, right? Because you can just kind of offset all of your problems onto that one thing and be like, I don't understand this, so it must be the problem. And I think that's what a lot of people do. And I think video games is something that people still don't really fully understand. Every politician, every one of them, well, I don't know about every single one of them. I mean, like, some people are more, and like, also, yeah, I can at least respect when a politician does it because, you know, it's whatever. But if you're a news anchor, right, and you're giving your opinion on something and not just reporting the news like you probably should, then I think that you should be much more, I don't know, like, I don't know, just like have like a better conviction about like how you feel about things. Because if you don't have that, I mean, like, really, like, what are you listening to in the first place?
And I look at this evil act, and let's condemn it for what it is, evil, evil. And I say, how long are we going to let, for example, and ignore at the federal level particularly, where they can do something about the video game industry? You know, in this manifesto that we believe is from the shooter, this manifesto, he talks about living out his super soldier fantasy on Call of Duty. We know that the video game industry is bigger than the movie industry and the music industry combined. And there have been studies that say it impacts people and studies that says it does not. But I look at the common denominators as a 60-some-year-old father and grandfather myself. What's changed in this country? We've always had guns. We've always had evil. But what's changed where we see this rash of shooting? And I
a million other fucking things. Like, how... As a 60-year-old man thinks that people are going on shooting rampages because of Call of Duty. And the idea that super soldiers was invented by video games and it wasn't in every other 80s movie in the entire world that had to do with anything that was military related. Yeah, but no, for whatever reason, it's actually because of video games. Yeah, of course, movies are so violent. Yeah, I can't imagine that. It's insane. Healthcare is clearly not talking point here. Well, I mean, like, obviously, yeah, the guy's probably crazy. Almost every single person, right? And this is like the same with like the ISIS guys that blow themselves up. They're probably mentally ill too. I mean, like, the idea that you're going to blow yourself up to get your own planet for a million different versions like that. Most people don't think like that. You know what I mean? Like, come the fuck on. If you're blowing yourself up for that, there's something wrong. Period. There's just something wrong.
I see a video game industry that teaches young people to kill. You know, in his manifesto, he said this is not a Republican or Democrat thing because he was concerned about robots and environment and immigrants. Obviously, a hate crime, I think, in my view, against immigrants from this young man. Just my view. We haven't had an official report on that. And I don't mean to talk on, but I've just, my heart is so heavy this morning because I think, where are we as a country? Yeah. I look at social media, the violence of just bullying people on social media every day, and we turn our head and we allow it. I look at, on a Sunday morning one, most of your viewers right now, half of the country are getting ready to go to church, and yet tomorrow we won't let our kids even pray in our schools.
Agenda Andy. See what I tell you guys, like I literally, like, see what I tell you guys. I literally heard 2 words out of this dumb fuck's mouth, and you already know what he's going to be talking about. It's just like the tone, the delivery, everything like that. You already know who this guy's talking about. Like, you immediately knew it. Like, half the country, well, he's saying that obviously to create, you know, some sort of like a narrative. But the point is, right, Oxygen causes just thinking, I mean, here's the thing. He took our prayers. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, you know, maybe if magic is real and they could pray spells to go, you know, like maybe give themselves a bulletproof vest, that would be good. But I don't think praying is really going to stop that. I mean, I think that, like, to a certain extent, like having, and the problem with these things, right, is that they're like 1 or 2% true. I think that people, like, whenever I've grown up, a lot of the kids that I've grown up with that have, you know, become adults now, the ones that had a more firm religious upbringing are actually generally more happy and more organized in their lives. Like, and this is again my personal opinion, right? And my personal experience, anecdotal evidence. But yeah, I mean, this is like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% more true. But whenever you're talking about somebody who's like an outlier like this, I don't think you can usually just like use things in that same way. It's the same thing with like violent video games. Do violent video games make some people more violent? I'm sure that there are instances of individuals that become more violent because they watch violent video or they play violent video games. You can't say that out of the billion people that play violent video games, or like let's say 100 million people that play violent video games, there's not one person that's going to experience an increase in aggression because of that. Obviously it can happen, but that's not the reason why these things are happening. Or if it is, it's like 1 or 2%.
We have to look at ourselves as a nation. There's many factors that go into these shootings, many factors. And it's not a time to politicize, it's a time to look deep inside of who we are as a country, where we no longer...
This is the thing. He's like, it's not a time to politicize after I just put out my fucking agenda. Well, of course it's not a time to politicize, Dan, because you just did it. You're finished now. Like, you just went on your one minute rant about this. Yeah, of course it's not time to do it. They're about to cut you off. But like, give me a fucking break. He didn't give an agenda? Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Salute our flag, or we throw water on law enforcement, and thank God we have law enforcement. Thank God we have them in times like this. And so it's a lot of factors that go on that we have to take a long look at who we are as a nation and where we want to go and what we're going to tolerate
Lieutenant
from
Governor,
social media and from video games. I'm sorry.
No, you packed a lot in.
I think, and like the thing with the social media is I do feel like that has a factor, right? I do think that social media has deteriorated the mental health of a lot of the people in the country. It's absolutely the case. I mean, you have like a culture that's completely materialistic, and social media shows people's A roll while everybody else is comparing it to their C roll, thinking that they're losers. You have these 11-year-old girls that think that if they don't look like Kim Kardashian, that they're never going to be happy and nobody's going to love them, even though even her photos, she photoshops and airbrushes the shit out of them. Yeah, I mean, social media does absolutely cause a lot of mental disorders, and I do think it's a confounding variable. But to act like this is some sort of a fucking problem, this is what it's about, I don't think that's it. You know, it's been true since magazines. It has and it hasn't been, right? Social media is much more ingrained in your life than a magazine is. I mean, everybody here now has a smartphone, basically. So everybody usually has, like, they browse Twitter, they look at these things. It's much more ingrained in society and your life than magazines ever were, at least in my perspective. And it's the same thing with guys too, right? I mean, it's very easy to say like, oh, for girls, like this is an issue. And I think that the reason why it's easier to talk about like women's issues with this same issue, with the same thing, is because they're very surface level, right? You have like beauty is such an important factor in society for a female that there's so much of a focus on that, you can see the visual difference, and it's much more apparent to everybody. But for males, it's the same thing, right? You have success. There's a million different things that like guys are supposed to have nowadays, and being attractive is one of those as well. I mean, like if guys don't go to the gym, you know, they're looked down on, etc. And I think that's definitely true. Guy's a better job than me, is six-pack or towards a lot. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of expectations that men have too. Also funny that video games, mass shootings, tall, muscular, and rich. Yeah, I mean, unless you make over $100,000 a year, you're 6 feet tall, and you have a six-pack, I mean, hey, just give up, right? I mean, that's the way that some people think. It's stupid, in my opinion. It's stupid, but it's also the way that they think. Every time magazines, social media algorithms, shit. Let me try and read some of these, okay? Social media algorithms will optimize for engagement. Well, yeah, of course they do. And I don't really know if it's social media's fault, right? I mean, I think it's just kind of, it's the symptom of a sick society rather than the actual disease. The social media is, for example. So I don't really think that you can do anything about social media because people are always going to gravitate to that kind of thing. But no, where's raiding it? Well, we're going to raid today in a bit, right? But I want to do other stuff too. Obviously, it's the way I always do. Blame Trump for promoting anti-immigrant hatred. Well, I mean, I don't think that Donald Trump is the first person to promote the, people that don't want to have immigrants in the country. I think that's been like a very, very common thing that a lot of people have felt forever. I mean,
hey, you talking about Trump?
Somebody brought it up, yeah.
Listen, Trump's a good guy. He did nothing wrong.
Well, it's not his fault this happened. I think that's ridiculous to say it. Saying it's his fault this happened is just as ridiculous as saying that it's video games' fault. Let's go to the last clip here. There's one more to go.
You know, we heard from the deputy governor of Texas earlier, and he was talking, it was a very impassioned conversation, really, and he was talking about the tone that the public uses on social media. He was talking about video games, all of these things that could have triggered, certainly the video game situation, he was saying, may have triggered the shooter there in El Paso. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of understanding that words matter and that when we're talking to each other on social media or looking at video games where they're using, you know, videos of characters?
You just should figure out like what you're talking about before you talk about it. You know what I mean? Like if this was, I mean, like the Waffle Time Thing Show 15 gifted community subs. Well, the videos of video. Well, I mean, like, how do you? This is insane. Video game characters. Yeah, they have no idea what they're talking about. And I can understand, like, if they knew what they were talking about and they talked about it with some degree of Waffle Time, again, thank you very much for the 15 subs. Sorry, I forgot if I said that or not. But if they talked about it with some degree of confidence, I feel like at least more people would be willing to listen. But like with this, like, who the fuck would listen to you? You don't even know what you're talking about. Come on.
With these weapons, is there a conversation to be had about that, about the tone that this country is using? It's become commonplace to say whatever you want to anybody on social media.
I think we should, and you want to see from these individuals what they wrote in others, but I mean, this may be a place that we could find this ahead of time. There may be a place of what's being written can be changed, could be an indication that an individual needs help in others that we can stop. But the idea of these video games to dehumanize individuals, to have a game of shooting individuals and others, I've always felt that is a problem for future generations and others.
Jesus Christ, like, I don't, like, what is this, man? Kevin? Like, the fuck are you thinking, Kevin? Like, what do you mean? It's, like, the fuck do you mean? What a bunch of bullshit. Like, intellectual dishonesty, it's not intellectual dishonesty or anything like that. They're just, like, and I don't even know, like, I honestly feel like a lot of these guys are just so fucking dumb that they're actually not trying to hide some sort of hidden agenda or make it to look like it's not, you know, like some sort of, you know, like right-wing rhetoric's fault. I just feel like they're fucking stupid. Like, I genuinely think a lot of these guys are just fucking morons. I don't know.
Who cares?
I don't know how they keep getting elected. This is insane.
They're not going to change anything. You can still play pretty much any video game you want to, no matter how violent it is. They're not really doing a good job influencing policy. They're just going on talk shows.
Well, they don't do anything. Like, that's the thing.
The same bullshit.
They just don't do anything. They don't pass any laws. Like, really? And if they do, it's something stupid. They don't, like, what the fuck do these guys do? Like, I don't understand. Like,
they just talk. That's all they just talk. They don't really do anything.
It's crazy. And complain about video games. Like, of all the things, fucking video games. This is usually how it happens. Shooting happens, video games. You know, well, people blame video games and everything. Like the Columbine one was a big one. They blame Columbine shooting. Why don't they have? Sorry, shootings don't happen in Europe. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the murder rate in Europe is. I have no idea. There's like 1,000 different things. Go ahead.
Instead of guns, they just do it with knives
or trucks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, they do plenty of stuff like that. But yeah, I think that the U.S. has a unique problem. I mean, like, there's so many confounding variables. So, like, for one, like, I'm not a super, like, oh, I don't want to have any gun control. I think that a certain amount of gun control makes sense. Obviously, it makes sense, right? Being able to sell a gun at a gun show without a license or registration, obviously, like, who's going to be for that, right? Not selling guns to crazy people, obviously, you know, who's going to be against that? Sure. But there are plenty of other countries that have guns that don't have this problem as much. I think it's very, very reductive to look at the entire problem and say, oh, it's just because of this one thing. Because I think it's much more complicated than that. And all of these different things play a factor, but they're just like tiny little factors. Gun show loopholes a myth, dude? Well, it's just an example, right? I mean, I'm sure there's other examples that I could use that aren't myths. And I'm not really sure exactly how the gun show thing works, if that's a myth or not, or whatever. But the point is still the same. I think everybody's for some degree of common sense.
We've watched from studies shown before of what it does to individuals. When you look at these photos of how it took place, you can see the actions within video games and others. But what I'd like to do is make sure just get all the facts where there are indications. And there's times before that we have found this, and there's times before that we've proven we could come together just in the last Congress.
So here's what needs to happen. Number one, we need to recognize that the Second Amendment is outdated and the right to own a gun is no longer necessary, and that the government can be trusted to take care of us. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that needs to be done is to force all citizens to turn in their guns and melt them down and repurpose them to be something else. And if they don't turn in their guns, they go to jail for like 5 or 10 years.
I think also they should probably unelect people. Like, maybe you go out and vote and you see like this dumb fucking clown on the ballot and you circle the other name. Doesn't matter who it is. Just take a risk. Throw in a little bit of chaos. Because these dumb fucking clowns are sitting around wasting our fucking money with their dumbass ideas and their stupid fucking agendas, wasting everybody's time, wasting everybody's money. If you live in the US, I can guarantee you probably at least, like, you've probably given this dumb fuck a penny. Like, this dumb fuck has probably gotten a penny from you in some way or another, because one of his bills, his salary, one of his other salaries, this dumb fuck, you're paying this dumb fuck every goddamn day. And I am just so tired of it. That computer illiterate people that are making all of these assumptions, like, it's fine. Like, let's say this guy knows a lot about architecture. Well, then talk about houses. You don't know what you're talking about. Focus on that.